Welcome to the Rising Woman Leaders podcast. We are a sisterhood of women stepping into courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and here I'll be sharing personal insights as well as interviews with inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs so you can create more daily magic in your life and also grow your business without losing sight of spiritual values as a rising woman leader. If you like this podcast, use our hashtag Rising Woman Leaders, follow me on Instagram at Meredith Ram, and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com. You'll receive all the new and inspiring content, including insights I only share on email. Now get cozy with a cup of tea, light a candle, and grab a journal to listen to this week's magical radio podcast. Hi everyone, I'm excited to sit down today with Ashley Rose Wolf, who is a women's health and sensuality coach who helps women reprogram their relationship with their bodies so they can live healthy, sexy, beautiful lives. Using cycle syncing, sensuality practices, holistic nutrition, and an ancient yogic science, Ashley helps women activate their sensual and cyclical wisdom to unlock their full feminine potential. When she's not leading the sensual revolution with Femme rising, you can find her doing sensual yoga, playing outside with her little adventure dog, Surrey Girl, soaking up vitamin C, SEA, and always stopping to smell the roses. Yay. Thank you, Ashley, for being here.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, and so Ashley and I found each other through the world of Instagram, which I love, and I'm sure you do too. It's you're really one of my favorite feeds. Like just looking through your images is just always so uplifting, and the designs and the colors, and I can tell just how much intention you put behind everything you share. So
thank you.
Yeah. And where I wanted to start. So I was looking through your website a bit, and there was something that really struck me around noticing the epidemic of women that are living more numbed out or shameful lives. And that struck me because that was part of my story of having physical pain coming up in my body, and my first reaction to just want to numb it out and to do the things that would take me away from myself. And it wasn't until I really found yoga and the practice of just like breathing and being present with myself that I began to change all of that around. But I'd love if you could just share more about that, what you've noticed and discovered, and also maybe how that played into your own story.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started off professionally. I started off as a women's health, holistic health coach, and I was working with women around body image and weight loss and self-love. And I got to the point where I realized that there was something really significant missing, that I was able to help my clients get really profound results, but that it was really just scratching the surface of connecting with themselves. And it became this really interesting co-evolutionary journey personally and professionally, because the level of awareness first struck me through my coaching practice. But then the more I started to think about it, I thought, oh my God, like the body, like I'm teaching all of these things about self-love and coming home to your body, but there wasn't an element of physicality, of touching the body, of engaging the body sensually. And that became a barrier for women, that women could really start to love themselves psychologically and emotionally and develop more positive body images, but that there was still this barrier of really tapping into that feminine, sensual, sexual sense of well-being and being at home. And that when I started to explore this, I realized that the biggest reasons that women avoided being sensually as far as senses go, being sensually in their body, being able to breathe and feel and be, was because of numbing out and shame. And so I started to explore this really personally, and it took me on a really beautiful journey of realizing how numbed out I still was physically, and from a sensation level in my body, because of my own layers of shame and trauma that I had encountered earlier in life. And I had done all this healing work and felt really good and solid about myself. And then when I started to explore this world more deeply, I realized that I was really cut off from some of the innate elements that made me a woman. And so the epidemic of women living numbed out, shameful lives really hit me then. And I realized it through my own story, because I had realized how far I had come. And if I had come that far and I was still disconnected, what a deep and prevalent issue this was that women were facing. And so that's sort of how I came to it. And from there, I started to engage in sensuality practices, and I found Tantra, and I really realized that that was the missing piece, that being able to be at home in your body meant you had to include it physically, sensually, sexually, cyclically, using your cycles, and being willing to feel, like how you said you had pain in your body and you would just try to avoid that pain. A really big thing about reclaiming our sensual nature as women is being willing to sit with what arises. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but that's really the rich wisdom that allows us to reprogram that pain and that discomfort to then come home to ourselves in a more deeper way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it opens the doors to so much when we really tune in. And it's so interesting that we could be doing all the right things, like the self-love and the self-care and the good nutrition, and but still be numbed out in some ways without even realizing it, and to not really even know. And it sounds like, I'm curious if you could paint us a picture, a little bit of just a little bit of what your life was like, or your relationship to your body was like before tapping into the Tantra and the sensuality practices, and what has shifted to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing, a huge reason, transparently, quite honestly, why I started studying Tantra was because I had difficulty reaching orgasm with partner. And I could achieve orgasm on my own, but there was always this barrier that came up with a partner. And so I started studying Tantra and these sensuality practices. And through starting to work with my energy and my physical level of sensation, I realized that I was numbed out, quite literally, vaginally. And so this part of our body, our pelvis, our pelvic floor, and our vaginal canal is really, it's our center of gravity and source of connection and sensation with all life. And because I had had so much trauma and upheaval in my life as a kid, I had shut that off. And so while I had done all this work to heal emotionally and psychologically and physically, and I'd overcome a lot of issues with eating disorders and things that were very body-based, my actual electrical system, my nervous system, was still shut down. And so through this process of Tantra, I started to really learn about the biomechanics of the body and the nervous system and Shakti. And Shakti is the divine principle of feminine energy. And what I love to share with people that most people don't know is that, yes, she's a force of energy, but she has a physiological home in our bodies. And so the word Kundalini, Kunda, means bulb, and Shakti lives on the posterior side of our cervix in a gland And so that gland is the kunda. It's the seat of our kundalini. It's the seat of our Shakti. And so for me, that part of my body was so shut down that energy, that bundle of nerves that live in that gland, they weren't active. And so through the process of waking it up, my teacher describes Shakti as a snake, and she says she's coiled around 3.5 times inside this kunda or bulb. And in order to wake her up, she's like a snake. And if you want to wake up a snake, and the snake is sleeping in a hole, you poke it with a stick. And so these practices of breath work and sensuality practices essentially shake and poke Shakti back awake. And so the difference in me physiologically, once Shakti started to wake up and I started to regain sensation and strength and connection to that part of my body, my metabolism changed. My interaction with my senses totally changed. My ability to really be a sensual and confident woman totally shifted. I really felt more at ease and confident with myself than I ever had. And the thing about Shakti is it's an energy. So, like it's like magnets. It's like attracts like. And even if people can't see what it is, they can feel it. And I started to have people in my life being like, what are you doing? You seem so different to me. Or what is your secret? I get asked what my secret is all the time. And so that's really the biggest thing. When I started to regain sensation, it was like my connection with my body and my connection with life came alive. And even though I had done all this healing work previously, it was like the thing that sealed the deal. And it's sort of like the missing piece that women, I find a lot of women feel like they're still searching for something. And it's this sense of energy and sensation of being connected to our sensual feminine nature. And so once that happened for me, that it changed my whole life. I mean, that's really the most basic way to say it is literally everything changed in the best way. And then also, from like a sensation standpoint, I've gained so much sensation vaginally and in my cervix, and not just from a sexual standpoint, but just my ability to sense and feel and perceive with my senses and with my feminine sense of intuition, all of that is deepened as well.
So powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you mentioned that there were like some experiences from either your childhood or your past where there had developed some form of shame or holding and numbing in that area of your body. And I know that there are so many women in the world who have a similar story. And I wonder if you could speak to just your experience of unwinding that shame and like what came up for you and what really helped you. And if you want to share anything about just that unwinding.
Yeah, so the really pivotal thing for me was recognizing how much that trauma from my childhood was still embedded in my body. So bringing awareness to that, it was really interesting because I felt like when I started studying sensuality and tantra, that I had a blockage. That's what I thought. I thought like, okay, I've got a blockage. Maybe it's psychological, maybe it's physical, maybe it's energetic. And it was really that when I started doing this work, like I said, I really realized that I was numbed out and that I had turned that off. And so how we were talking about the beginning of the call of so many women, this epidemic of living numbed out, shameful lives. The thing is, we have these experiences that happen to us. For most women, we're very young when we're told that there's something bad or shameful or wrong about us or our bodies. And the nervous system in the brain, literally, it's like flipping a switch. And so for me, that trauma had literally just shut me down. And like I said, I had done all this work to be able to heal from that psychologically and emotionally and even spiritually. And for me, dealing with it from the next level really had to do with the awareness of like literally being willing to feel and sit with primarily the fact that I couldn't feel because it had been so numbed out and turned off. And so in that way, resensitizing and healing from that in a deeper way meant that I had to be willing to practice and trust in a way that I was showing up and doing the work every day. So from a very physical standpoint, I'm doing strengthening exercises and sensuality exercises. You know, when I would engage in these practices, I couldn't physically feel them. And so it took a lot of perseverance for me to show up and continue to build, because the body remembers, you know, the body remembers everything. And so I had to really reprogram my body's awareness and tell it that it was okay to feel and then regain that sensation. And so for me, it was a very physical thing. For a lot of women, it's emotional. And so recognizing across the spectrum of however women have experienced shame or numbing out, that the process of resensitizing can be different for everyone. And having compassion and patience with that, with whatever your journey is, whatever you've been led to heal within yourself, knowing that it's going to be the right thing for you, and that you can have teachers that can guide you, but it really comes down to your own body and your own being and how your experiences with life have manifested in a way that have led you to where you are, if you are numbed out or shut down.
Yeah, just that everything has happened to lead you into the woman you are now, and embracing that and knowing that everyone has their own path. And so I'd love to hear a little more about the specific practices you use. Like you've mentioned breath work, and I know you share a lot about cycle syncing, and I'd love to just dive into the practices that were really helpful for you and that you see really begin to help other women.
Absolutely. So one of the most powerful practices, it sounds so simple, but it's literally just moving your body in a physical, sensual way. For most women, it's through a form of dance. I remember when I first started to re-engage with my body, moving my hips felt really, really foreign to me. And it was almost like I was stuck, you know, like you see some women who are these like very beautiful, fluid dancers. And I just felt like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to move my body like that. And it's a common thing that I witness in my clients, is that it's like mechanical, and it takes a level of, like I said, practice and compassion over time to regain that feminine fluidity in your body. So a really great practice is to put on your favorite music for a few minutes every morning and to practice doing hip circles and deep breathing and connecting your breath to the rhythm of the movement. So that's one very basic way to start. Let's see. One of my other favorite practices is to actually engage your level of sensation vaginally with your breath. And so this is really a great way for women to identify if they're numbed out in their pelvic region or not. And it's interesting because most women will just know. They don't even need to get to this practice. Most women, it's like, if I say, are you numbed out? They'll have an immediate yes or no. But if you want to determine your level of sensation, there's a really great form of breathing and practice that is one of my favorite things to do with my clients and to teach. And it's what I call the pussy pulse. And why don't we go through it really quick? Because that's the easiest way. So finding your feet on the ground and feeling your pelvis beneath you, whether you're sitting or you're standing. And then begin to deepen your breath, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. Inhaling deeply through the nose. And then on the exhale, start to send that breath down into your pelvis. And continue to inhale. Exhale, directing the breath down into your pelvis. And then as you continue breathing, I'm going to start to explain some things. So just keep connecting to your breath into that rhythm of inhaling and exhaling down into your pelvis. And what I'd like you to imagine is that you have 3 levels of your vaginal canal. You have the opening, and then you have another layer that is about halfway up the canal in between your opening and your cervix. And then you have a 3rd level, which is the cervix itself. And so you can do this exercise whether or not you have a womb. If you do not have a womb, your body still retains the cellular memory of your pelvic bowl. So know that you can continue to cultivate this energy and this presence in your pelvic bowl, regardless of your current physiology. And so on your next inhale, I invite you to inhale and bring a pulse to the opening of your vaginal canal. And then on the exhale, release that pulse, gently letting it go. And then inhale, pulse at the opening. Exhale, release. And then inhale, pull that pulse up to the mid-level. And then exhale, release, let it go. It's a gentle bearing down and out on the release on the exhale. And then the inhale, try to practice, it's less of a clench and it's more of an activation of pulling up and in. And sitting with this sensation within yourself, knowing whatever level of sensation you have in this moment, it's perfect. Continuing to connect with your breath and that pulse. And when you're ready on your next inhale, you're going to try to get that pulse all the way up to your cervix. And then you're going to exhale, release, and let it go. Inhale, pull it up and in. See what you feel being present with that sensation. And then exhaling, gently releasing, letting it go. And then placing both hands on your lower abdominal region. Again, breathing deeply and directing that breath down into your pelvic bowl. Giving yourself just a small little bit of self-love and gratitude for this practice and compassion for whatever showed up for you. And on your next inhale, just breathing that love right down into your pelvic bowl, thanking it for what it revealed to you in this moment. And when you're ready, allowing the breath to return to normal and coming back into the room. And like I said, knowing that whatever you felt or you didn't feel, that it's perfect for you. And that this is where you're starting from. We all have to start somewhere. And so some women are hypersexual and some women are hyposexual, which some women are super turned on and some women are super turned off. And these connections have a lot to do with the neural structure and strength of our vaginal canal and our cervical cone and the pelvic bowl in general. And when I started doing this work, I couldn't feel anything. I could barely feel the pulse at the opening. And through continual practice of this, I've really been practicing for 2 years. I have incredible strength and sensation. And it's actually kind of funny. My boyfriend is like, you need to warn women that they can get a little too strong with this.
Yeah. I'm curious what your practices look like in your life and thank you for that meditation. It's just so sweet and gentle to just be connecting to that space and how simple it really is to just begin to start. But I'm curious, is this like you have a meditation practice and you'll do this in the morning, or is it just something that happens throughout your day spontaneously? What does that look like for you?
So it's evolved for me over time. When I first started doing these practices, I also teach a sensual style of yoga, and so that's another one of my tools that I teach is that within this sensual style of yoga, you do the pussy pulse aligned with the movements, and so it's actually really powerful, and it feels really good in your body because you're cultivating and generating this energy. And because we're breathing in and out of our noses, it helps build heat and also keep the energy contained. And so through sensual yoga, it's how it started off for my practice and how it mostly continues today, is I pair that breathing and that pulsing sensation with the movement. And so it deepens your ability to be in your body and to move from your pelvic bowl as your center of gravity. And so initially when I started doing this practice, I had a pretty significant breath work routine because that's what I needed and what I really wanted at the time. And so I was doing things like breath of fire and the pussy pulse and working with the bandhas more regularly. And then, once it becomes integrated in your body, it's almost like an activation takes place. And then getting back into the practice whenever you want after that activation is much easier. And it's the same thing with resensitizing. Once you have developed a certain level of sensation, the practice can evolve and become easier and deeper, full of more sensation and experience as you continue. And so my primary practice now is sensual yoga and sensual movement. And quite honestly, it's practicing these sensuality and sexuality techniques in partnership with my man. And the beauty of what I really love about these practices is that, that's where I'm at in my evolution right now, but that these practices are really meant for you to master and learn how to make love to your own body, whether it's sexually or not. This is really the practice for you to come home and love and learn how to touch and feel yourself. And so another practice that I love to incorporate with the pussy pulse is just sensual caress. And that's just very lightly taking your fingertips and allowing them to travel with a feather-light touch across your skin. And breathing really deeply into the sensation as you do that, and feeling what parts of your body have more sensation, what parts have less sensation. What I love about finger light touch is also bringing sensation to the parts of my body that I tend to forget or neglect the most. So like I'll bring my fingertips around my elbows and underneath my armpits and the lower part of my back and my knees, and breathe and feel and pulse and really allow to deepen into that sensual connection with my body. And then, yeah,
I'm just doing delicious. It right now.
Yeah, it's pretty delicious. And it's a very easy, and I want to use the word safe. It's an easy and safe way to begin to engage with these practices. And I want to emphasize that word safe because for many women, the reason they're shameful or numbed out is actually because of abuse or trauma. And so knowing that it is safe to be in your body and it is safe to reconnect with these sensations, and that you can be as gentle and slow with yourself as you need to be. And then my other favorite tool, obviously, is cycle syncing, and that is the practice of working with your menstrual cycle and actually learning how to plan your life around it. And so, if there's a theme or sort of like the nutshell for me of what it means to live an empowered feminine life, it's really being connected to your pelvis and honoring what's happening in this part of the body. So you'll probably see that sense of fluidity and connection through the teachings and practices that I really believe in and embody. And with cycle syncing, I used to be so disconnected from my cycle. I experienced PMS for 2 weeks out of every month for years. And it took me years to realize that it was actually my cycle. And so many women, talking about guilt and shame, we are taught to feel a huge sense of disconnect from our menstrual cycles. And so this is a source of really reclaiming your connection with what makes you a woman, really, really, really deeply honoring that. And so through tracking my cycle, it's amazing because I now not only is my PMS about a week or 3 to 4 days before I bleed, but my period itself has gotten much lighter and is much shorter. And so it's really interesting if we're operating as women from a level of ignorance or suppression or avoidance around our cycles often will manifest in ways trying to get our attention. And so it'll manifest in ways like PMS with increased cramps, mood swings. And so I love to use cycle syncing because it's such a practical tool to bring really tangible results to the quality of your life, and in addition to your connection with your body. And the magic with cycle syncing is that we are able to really identify the gifts hidden in each phase of our cycles. And that's something that as women, we're really not taught. We're not taught good things about our cycles. And so cycle syncing is really a primary tool that I use in my practice as well, that always has really stunning results for the women who start to apply it to their lives.
Yeah, I wanted to share with you that it was last June, just by coincidence, that my moon cycle happened to be on the same time that I was on a retreat where I was teaching yoga, but we were out in total nature, no technology, none of that, just out in these like rustic, beautiful cabins. And and I was on my moon that weekend and just like was fully giving myself that permission to read books and to sleep and to rest and to just like make art and do things that like were so creative at that time, and also just so intuitive, and just like letting myself feel everything that came up at that time. And since then, I've just like really set the intention of like, okay, and the moon cycle can actually be just such a luscious, enjoyable time. And I've been on my moon the past couple of days, and like taking that space of like, okay, just reading the books, like letting go, going outside, and it's so sweet now. And actually, like literally, I used to have usually one day where I would get cramps and discomfort coming up. Like that, since I started that practice of creating the space, it hasn't been happening. It's like, and if it does happen a little bit of discomfort, it's like I just breathe with it and watch it start to like open up and have a different relationship and perspective to those sensations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's the beautiful result that we can get as women when we give ourselves permission to do that. And I think that that's the biggest thing that being aware of your cycle and cycle syncing gives you is a sense of permission to honor yourself and to be aware with what's coming up for you during that time. And yeah, absolutely. The element of physicality and how our bodies respond when they receive the nourishment that they need is just, it's so remarkable. And, as women, we talking about the feminine and masculine elements of our cycles, the pre-ovulation and ovulation cycles are the more masculine based. It's sort of when we're really energized and action oriented, and our abilities to manifest and create and give and be the women that we sort of always think we should be able to be. Happens in the first half of our phase, the pre-ovulation and ovulation. And then premenstrual and menstrual is when we really shift, and our body is really calling for us to slow down and honor our intuitive knowing and nurture. But our society conditions us so much to continue to show up in the second half of our cycles as we do in the first. And so when we make that transition of honoring and recognizing when we're moving out of ovulation and into premenstruation and menstruation, we're really able to step more into that feminine landscape. And, talking about numbing out and disconnecting, that's a huge time of the month where women disconnect because they're tired. And so they just pump themselves full of more caffeine, and they think they have to work harder, and they have to continually try to show up, when really that's the time to slow down and nurture and feel, the primary element of feeling and sensing your feminine core. And so the beauty of sensuality practices or cycle syncing or whatever it is, wherever you're ready to begin with your body, is that it's sort of, once you develop this awareness of how powerful sensation and your connection with your femininity and your feminine cycles are, you can kind of gauge where you want to place your attention and where it's the best for you to start. So for some women, it might be the sensuality practices. And for some women, it might really be, okay, I need to really start to get in tune with my cycle. And, so many women don't even know how many days their cycle is. So there's no way to really plan ahead or prepare or even be aware of what else is going to be going on in their lives during that time. And working with your cycle benefits everything in your life. It benefits your relationships. It benefits your personal relationship with yourself, and especially for the women who feel like they have to show up and be more and give more, especially professionally. Once that awareness starts to be gained during the premenstrual and menstrual phases, that element of permission and planning ahead in order to prioritize what needs to get done in the first half or the second half of your cycle can really open up a level of possibility for you, because so many women are like, oh, I don't have time, or that seems unrealistic, but these things are so necessary. And once we realize that it's actually pretty easy, we just have to give it a little bit of awareness, it opens up so much for us to be able to really just connect with ourselves more deeply. And when we nourish ourselves more deeply, when we can connect to what we need and give it to ourselves, when we can fill up our own cups first, especially during those premenstrual and menstrual phases, it really enables us to show up more fully for everyone and everything else in our lives. And so that's really the beauty of, of being a woman, is sharing your magic with the world and knowing when you need to nourish so that you can replenish, so that you can share that magic.
So good. So true. My friend Karen and I were laughing about just like how amazing the world would be if there was some kind of like mandated, the government like mandated that all women had to take off 4 days from work on their moon cycles. Like just how much would shift in the world. Like if it's amazing. So
It would
it's
be,
like,
if that happened. So this, I'm so glad you said that, because actually something I want to point out is that if you are able to give yourself that time to rest and nourish, and for each woman it's different, so maybe for you it's the 4 days before you bleed that are the most intense, or maybe it's the 2 days before and then the 2 days into it, or the 4 days from the time you bleed on. Whatever those days of intensity are for you, the more you're able to rest and nourish and replenish the few days leading up to that and during those days, the more powerfully and quickly you're going to be able to hit the ground running as soon as your energy reboots. And so actually your levels of productivity increase and your levels of creativity increase like crazy. And so, yes, not only would we have a world where women's bodies are honored and respected and revered, but the level of creative potential and output and productivity would increase like crazy.
wow, yeah. Like so many women are just like recovering from trying to push themselves during that week. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about food and just like relationship to the cycle and the different times of the cycle. Because one thing I did notice that seemed to really help me was cutting out sugar. And I just wanted to speak to that because I feel like the way I used to think was that like, oh yeah, you get cravings at that time of your cycle and you want to have the brownies and like really fudgy things, and I actually found that like through trial and error a few times, like that actually caused a lot more discomfort and disruption. And I just wonder if you could speak to either that or just about food in general and the cycle syncing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. Because food issues and body image issues are some of the biggest things that we can identify while we're cycle syncing as indicators for what's going on for us, whether it's physically or emotionally. And so through the process of cycle syncing, I'm just going to back up a little bit and explain exactly what that is before I answer that question so that the answer makes a little bit more sense. So with cycle syncing, you're tracking the 4 phases of your cycle. Like I mentioned, you have your pre-ovulation, ovulation, premenstruation, and menstruation. And those all have a certain amount of days. And when you cycle sync and track your cycle, one of the primary things is that you just write down how you feel on certain days. And those words can be anything. It can be like bloated, fat, sexy, tired, irritated, hungry, or it could be a little bit more detailed, like really tired at 12 p.m., but better at 4 p.m. And the beauty of writing all these things down month after month is that there will be a pattern. You will see a pattern emerge. And specifically with food and body image issues, you will see, especially if you have cravings, they're pretty much guaranteed to happen in a pattern every month. And so the first thing is we'll use sugar because that's a good example. So when you're having cravings with your cycle, that is indicative of a few things. Cravings are either physiological, so our body is physically telling us that it wants or needs something, or they're more psychological and emotional. And so either way, getting in touch with your cravings is a great way to discover what is going on for you. So sugar, for example, if it's physical or emotional, sugar is sweet. So you're probably lacking a sense of sweetness and connection and intimacy and feeling loved and supported in your life in some way. And if you have all of that physically and emotionally, but you're experiencing that craving from a physical standpoint, then what your body is probably looking for is healthy carbs. And so what is really great to play with during that time would be things like roasted carrots or brown rice, finding a type of carb that nourishes you and fills you up. For me personally, my body really craves brown rice when I'm premenstrual. I need about a cup of brown rice every day or every other day. My body also really craves fat. And so I tend to have mashed up avocado and brown rice pretty regularly. And before I started cycle syncing, when I mentioned that I was having 2 weeks of PMS every month, I was really disconnected from my body and my needs for nutrition and nourishment at that time. But I was also healing from an eating disorder. And so during that time, I was trying to make really healthy choices as much as I could. But what would happen is I'd be really good for 2 weeks and I'd make really good food choices and I'd be really proud of myself. And then like clockwork, I would get so hungry and I would binge. But my body was physically hungry. And the problem was I was binging because I didn't know what it actually needed. And so I was just trying to satiate this sense of hunger. And after really getting in tune with things like my blood type and understanding what those cravings meant, I was like, oh, well, I'm hungry because my body's getting ready to bleed. And it needs certain nutrients. I didn't know that I was a O blood type for the majority of my life, and O's need red meat. And if you're an O and you're a vegetarian or a vegan, chances are, if you maintain that lifestyle for a long term, like I did, you're going to have some physiological and hormonal challenges. And so when I recognized that, I was like, oh, I'm a type O, I have to start eating meat. That was, it took me a few months to really, to do that and to like get okay with not being a vegetarian. And I was actually a vegan at the time when I realized it. When I shifted into giving my body meat in those 2 weeks before my bleed, it shifted my whole relationship with my cycle dramatically. And so the process of cycle syncing with cravings and with a body and body image is it helps you to identify what those patterns are. And once you have that awareness, you have something to work with. And even if you gain that awareness and you don't know what it means per se, if you seek out help or support or assistance from somebody who does, whether it's a primary care practitioner, integrative health, someone like me who helps you with your cycle, then you have sort of like a template of patterns to bring and say, okay, this is what I know is happening to my body every month, and I need a little bit of help understanding it. But for the most part, the thing with cycle syncing and starting to understand your cravings is that you have this crazy innate wisdom within you as a woman. And once you develop this awareness, you're able to expand it. And so generally when we start to give ourselves the time and awareness we need, we're able to arrive at the answers on our own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot for me with the cravings. I discovered it was the healthy fats that my body was really craving. And when I started having, like my body used to really want to crave like the fudgy, heavy kind of foods. And then when I was like, I discovered this recipe for an avocado, banana, coconut oil, like with dates. It was like a chocolate mousse, but it's just like 4 or 5 ingredients, so healthy. And I would have that during my cycle, and it was like, whoa, it felt totally different. I was actually just giving myself the real quality fats that I was craving.
Absolutely. And so the thing about cravings that I love is that So for you, you were craving that chocolatey, fatty, kind of thick substance. Mm-hmm. And so that is an indication of what your body's looking for. So, and especially, you know, magnesium in chocolate for women is huge. And that's why a lot of women turn to things like chocolate bars when, yeah, your body's probably deficient in magnesium and seeking things like raw cacao or more greens to nourish it. But the element of reaching for unhealthy foods, like, you know, things like fudge or chips or whatever, is that your mind psychologically will go to what it knows. And so I'm so glad that you pointed out that when you recognized that it was the healthy fats and you made that shift, that how much better you felt when you started incorporating that in to your life. But something else I want to mention for the women on the call is that you might need to give it time. So don't be surprised if you try, you're like, okay, I'm going to try this and see if it works. You might need more than one time, and you might need up to 5 times for your body to regulate to see if that is what it really needs, or if your body really needs the nutrients for it to respond to the nutrients. So giving yourself a little bit of time and patience with that awareness, and recognizing the journey to understanding your body, like it's a big experiment. You know, none of us rarely get it right the first time. And so being willing to know that, like, okay, I'm entering into this from a state of curiosity and seeing what works for you, instead of trying something one time and getting frustrated and throwing in the towel. You know, reconnecting with and establishing this sense of knowing and wisdom with your body and allowing your body time to respond it's really important.
Yeah, so true. Just having the patience, trying things out, listening to the wisdom, because we have it all in us and it just takes the listening. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you work at all with the energies of the moon and with the cycle syncing, or want to share anything about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I work a lot with the moon, and I work a lot with feminine archetypes that are represented by the moon. So, for example, the new moon is when it's dark and a time of, you know, like fertile possibility. And so that goddess would be Kali. And, you know, she's a goddess of creation and destruction. And if we're working with the new moon and with a goddess archetype or a feminine archetype, you can allow yourself to gravitate towards what feels best for you. And that's a really beautiful thing about coming home to your wisdom as a woman, is like, okay, do I really identify with the moon, or do I identify with a feminine archetype, or maybe it's both? But yeah, so I do work with the moon. The thing with the moon phases that I think is important to point out is that as women, we're obviously incredibly connected to the moon. Our bodies are between 50 and 60% water. And so the ebb and flow of the tides on the planet from a gravitational standpoint are really linked up with our gravitational relationship with the moon. And this is really rich lunar wisdom that we've carried cellularly for thousands of years. The thing that can trip women up when they start working with archetypes and the moon, in addition to their cycles, is that they'll be placing more emphasis on the moon phase that is actually happening in the sky instead of their own personal moon phase. So I want to throw that out from a level of awareness of, like, yes, there are archetypes that go along with each moon phase that we can work with Mama Moon in the sky, but that it's really important to work with your own moon phases first, because you know, if you're bleeding during the full moon, you know, that's typically a time of amplification and energy and you know, setting new intentions and wanting to go be out and social in the world. But if you're bleeding during that time, you might be curled up on the couch, and that won't be appropriate for you. And so learning how to interact with your own personal moon cycle, in addition to working with the moon, is really helpful to know, because obviously when we're working with our own moon cycle, we're working with our own feminine energy. And then when we're working with Mama Moon, we're interacting with that energy as well. So recognizing that there is an infinite level of possibility and potential for your relationship with your moon, what that's like, and how that interacts with Mama Moon in the sky. That said, yes, the moon phases are incredibly powerful to work with and to cultivate relationship with in our lives, and they really enable us to, like I said, reconnect with that feminine wisdom. And so each moon phase actually aligns with the menstrual phases. So pre-ovulation is when you're waxing and you're growing in energy and you've come out of your bleed and things are starting to feel good again. So just like the moon is gaining light and energy in the sky, so are you in your body. And then when we move into ovulation, that corresponds with the moon being full. And when we ovulate, that's when we're the most fertile. And when the moon is full, that is when the earth is the most fertile. And so there are these beautiful parallels between fertility and creation. And this is when we are at the height of our magnificence as women. And then as we transition out of the full moon and we start to wane in light in the sky, we also start to wane in energy within our bodies. And that's as we start to go into the premenstrual phases and the wisdom of the darkness and the wisdom of the lack of the light up in the sky, and retreating really into that feminine side and honoring our intuition and our psyches. And then we begin to descend more deeply into the darkness, into the full moon, into the new moon, the dark moon, which is correlates with the time of our bleed. And that is really the time of full release and really letting go of everything that has not been serving you from the past month or whatever you want to work with in your life at that time, and allowing yourself to be nourished and connected to your femininity. And so the most powerful thing to work with is to realize what phase is like your phase. And it's interesting because for me, I have two, and my phases are the waxing moon and the waning moon. And traditionally, women really identify with the full moon and the new moon. And that's when they sit with their intentions and manifestations of the full moon, and you know, awareness of all that's been and what they want to create and cultivate in their lives. And then with the new moon, a time for release and planting those dream seeds of what it is you want to manifest, and being in the fertile darkness of creation and honoring that inner wisdom and intuition of what's coming up. But for me, I really identify with waxing and waning. And a huge part of that is because of my personal moon cycle. And so for me, my bleed happens the week after the new moon. So I'm regaining my energy physically as the energy of the moon is gathering light in the sky. So again, just recognizing what works for you as a woman, but that there are really rich opportunities to find your own connection. And if you're just starting out here experimenting, and you know, maybe you just start with the full moon. Maybe you start with the new moon. Trusting your inner guidance to see what feels best for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's true that it's so good to look at our own cycles because sometimes our cycles change, like with the moons. I used to have my bleed on the full moon, and now it just switched to the new moon. And so there are just different energies that can come up in our lives that change things around, and to be able to flow with that and just continue with the cycles, and knowing that the feminine and being women, it's not always like to a T what the structure, what Western medicine might say it should be, but it's just that it's always flowing and changing.
Absolutely. And also to that point, we've sort of been taught that 28 days is a regular, quote unquote, regular cycle. But if you start cycle syncing, you might find that you have a longer or a shorter cycle. And it's a regular cycle. A normal cycle can be anywhere from 24 to 36 days. And so if you have a longer or a shorter cycle, that is going to affect if you bleed in alignment with the moon phase, or if it changes more quickly for you. If you turn over from the new moon to the full moon, or you're waxing or you're waning at the time of your bleed. I personally have a 29 to 33 day cycle. And it, like you said, like the feminine is always changing and ebbing and flowing, and it's based on what's happening in my life and with my body. And the thing is, with cycle syncing, even though my body is sort of in flux from month to month, because I cycle sync, I have very specific symptoms that hit the day before I bleed. So I always know when it's going to happen, even if it's longer or shorter than the cycle previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such good information. Well, I feel like I've just learned so much in this call. So beautiful. And I'm curious if you could tell the people listening, like, if they want to dive deeper, where can they go? What can they do? And also just in general, what you're excited about in your business right now.
Absolutely. So if you want to dive deeper, definitely follow me on Instagram. My handle, it's at Femme, Femme .rising. Like Meredith mentioned in the beginning of the call, Instagram it's my favorite social media platform. It's the one that I'm on all the time. I love to interact with people on Instagram also. So if you ever have questions, feel free to, leave a comment or send me a direct message. Definitely check out the website, femrising.com. And then what I'm really excited about right now is this program that I've created called Shakti Body. And this program actually goes over a lot of what we've talked about on the call today. It's about sensuality. It's about cycle syncing. It's about activating your Shakti. And it's really about giving you the tools to heal body shame and self-based shame in order to own your power as a woman. And the thing that I'm just so thrilled about with this program is that the tools and resources that I have are for you to become the expert on you. Because as Meredith and I, as we've talked about on this call, we're all different. We all have different cycles. We all have different bodies. We all have different experiences that have led us to become who we are. And so what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, but this program gives you the tools to become the expert on you. And so that program is called Shakti Body, and it's a 6-week online adventure that is in alignment with the moon. So our calls will have a live call once a week. They're in alignment with the moon phases so that you can connect to these energies and archetypes in your life as we go throughout the program. So if you want to find out more about that, go to femrising.com/Shakti, SHAKTI -body. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. One more thing I would love to mention is that if you sign up for my newsletter, you get these really beautiful mantra cards that are downloadable, but you can also get access to a link to book a quick chat with me. And I like having heart to hearts. Like, this is a free talk. If you need some support or guidance, or you're wondering what the right move for you is going to be or where to start, please sign up for the newsletter, get access to that link. You can book a free chat. There's no obligation. It's really me being in service of you to help you find what you need to really own and embrace your journey in a way that is going to be the most beneficial for you. So,
so sweet.
Yeah, so that's what I have to offer. And like I said, I love to interact. So just say hi. I'd love to connect and be friends.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the program, it looks so beautiful. I will include the links when I share this post. And I just know that so many women are going to benefit from all that you have to share.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wonder if you have any closing words before I close the call with a prayer, but anything for women out there who might just be just at the beginning of connecting to their bodies in this way, or maybe feeling lost in some way, just like what you could offer and say to them.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up. I would love to say that you are in the perfect place, that there's nothing wrong with you, and that whatever has happened to get you to this point has served its purpose, and that moving forward, taking action and moving from a place of awareness is really how you begin to reclaim and own yourself, your body, and your story. And so I want to point out this simple formula that can really help you get out of feeling shame or limited or less than. And that is that self-awareness leads to self-acceptance, and self-acceptance leads to self-love. But there's no way we can get to that self-love piece until we're willing to gain the self-awareness. So allowing yourself to go there, allowing yourself to become aware of yourself and your patterns and your past, and knowing that you can do this, that if you're just starting out on your journey, take it one step at a time and have patience and compassion, and know that we all start somewhere, and that the me I am today is vastly different from the me I was 10 years ago, and that healing is an inside job and it's not an overnight process. So continue to show up for yourself, have patience, compassion. Also, please get help. As women, we think that we have to do these things alone, or that we are alone and we're the only ones, and we're not. We are so, even if we've had different experiences, the emotions and how it impacts us as women is very similar. And so talk to a coach, talk to a friend, get a therapist, invest in yourself, sign up for the program, do that yoga teacher training, commit to going for a walk 10 minutes a day to be with yourself and breathe. Wherever your entry point is, trust that and honor that. And know that the more you cultivate this relationship with your body, the deeper your level of self-awareness will be, and that allowing yourself to continue to come to that self-awareness with curiosity instead of judgment over and over again. Curiosity instead of judgment will continue to open the door to yourself more deeply over time. And that you're worth it. You are so worth it. We need you. We need you to do this work. We need you to show up. We need you to heal and to be yourself and to be authentic and expressive. And we need you to share your magic. Like, we need you to heal and save the planet. So you're worth it. Yes. And you can do it. And we believe in you. And if you need help, please reach out.
Yes. Amen, sister. Well, let's just close our eyes and center back into our breath. I'm bringing my hands to the center of my heart, just feeling those words vibrating in my body. That affirmation, I am worth it. And the world needs us, all of us, to be out there, giving our magic, doing our work, being there to heal ourselves so that we can go out and do our greatest work. So may we be filled up with so much awareness, with so much love, with so much of that acceptance for ourselves, for exactly where we're at. And may we trust in the process, know that we're exactly where we need to be, and that if we're listening to this call today, there's just some magical something weaving in the universe that just knows that you are supposed to be here. You can trust that. There's something here for you. And to take whatever that is, whatever that gem that has been ignited in your heart, and take that out into the world, begin to tune in and listen and take action. And so I'll bow just from my heart to yours, to all of you listening. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you for all your wisdom. Namaste.
Namaste.